Welcome back to Thompson. Sid Clark, the first episode of 2023.
Wow.
Was your New Year's as less as lack of exciting as mine was?
No, it was crazy because I woke up New Year's Eve morning and I was playing my NBA 2K21 game. We'll not get into that now, but I'm mad at NBA 2K at the moment. But so I was playing my game, having a good time, watching the rain, and I knew it was going to rain all day long. So I was like, "Oh, this is kind of cool. Maybe I'll run over and do a couple exchanges in the morning." And all of a sudden, it turned to snow.
Oof.
And it wasn't supposed to until 4 p.m. But at about 8 a.m., it turned to snow. And I thought, oh no, here we go. And sure enough, we got a foot of snow on New Year's Eve. So New Year's Day was just a lot of shoveling. And my back is still barking at me for doing that. So
do you know that there's supposed to be a historical storm hitting the Bay Area starting tomorrow?
Yeah, and we just had ours. So we had like the snow part of it, and now this thing is hitting you guys tomorrow, and it's supposed to hit us. So I'm gonna watch the news. I sound like a 70-year-old man. I'm gonna go watch the news after this so I can see the weather report, right? Because you can't get it anywhere else but on the TV. It's not like you can't get weather reports from websites.
Yeah, well, okay, so there's a story on our ABC affiliate, and it says Wednesday's incoming strong atmospheric river is the first level 5 in the history of this website's storm impact scale. The NWS is saying this system will cause widespread flooding, damage, and will likely cause loss of life.
Wow, man. That's everybody in the Bay Area. Be careful. I've been through some doozies down there back in the day. 1995 is the one I can remember. And that flooded like everywhere. So be careful down there. If you don't, it's probably one of those ones they tell you, if you don't have to go anywhere, don't go anywhere. Just stay home, stay off the roads.
Yes. And okay, so tomorrow is also the game that I was going to take my kids to, Warriors and Pistons, which means driving into the city. So now we're trying to think of what plan B could be. I've put the tickets up for sale at a discount, so I'm going to be out a good chunk of money. But now I'm just kind of worried, like, if I even sell them at all, because if people are paying attention to the weather, they may not.
When we were young, we didn't. So that's the thing. We didn't pay attention to the weather. We just did whatever when we were young.
Or maybe they live in San Francisco, so it's just,
there you go.
Getting to the. But so one of the beat writers for the Detroit Pistons, my son has been sort of in contact with him, trying to get him as a guest on his podcast. And so he made a joke on Twitter. My son made a joke on Twitter about how this writer is coming into town and no wonder the storm is coming or something like that. And he said that he wonders if the NBA is going to cancel the game. I can't imagine they cancel a game for a storm.
It's possible. I mean, if this is historic, I don't know if you've seen the models, but off the coast, it looks like a hurricane. So, I mean, that, they cancel football games on the East Coast because of hurricanes. So I wouldn't be shocked, honestly, because again, if they'll do in storms like this, they'll do anything they can to keep people off the roads. And that's a big chunk of people going to those games. So if they can, I wouldn't be shocked, honestly, if they canceled.
Yeah, so we're trying to now figure out if we can actually go to Saturday's game, and it's still going to be raining on Saturday, but maybe not as terrible as because tomorrow just looks like maybe the worst weather day, maybe in like our lives or something.
Yeah, possibly.
Which is kind of scary to think about, right?
Yeah, which means it just funnels right into here, and it's a warmer storm, so I think we're mostly getting rain, and then we have problems with. We just had this big snowpack event, 5 feet of snow in the mountains. Then it rains on top of that, and it all just goes right into the Truckee River. And then we have to worry about flooding downtown. We've had floods downtown since I've lived here, and it's bad. Our building is right next to the river. So there was one day, actually, they told everybody, just do not come in. Courts are closed. Don't even bother trying to make it down here. So we could see something like that in the next couple of days too. I have to go to a doctor's appointment at 8 tomorrow for my back. So I want to try to make that at least.
Yeah, man. All right. There's your weather report for the week. Okay. So, we didn't just get on here to talk about the weather. We got on here to talk about some Giants. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this because this is a little bit of a kind of a dicey thing, I think, for Giants fans, which is this Carlos Correa situation. I think a lot of Giants fans have pulled back on their anger from what happened when Correa was signed and then he wasn't signed, because a little bit more of the story is coming out. And I think Zadie is definitely trying to make sure that the fan base understands what they were dealing with. And so the idea of Correa still being out there, the Mets have not, I think we all thought the Mets were just gonna be like, injury schminjury, like sign him up. And that didn't happen. So even Cohen is a little bit more responsible than I think people give him credit for. But where do you sit with Boras and Correa in, I guess I'm assuming the reason he's still unsigned is because they want somewhere close to that original deal. But, the 13 years or the 12 years, I guess now, 300 and some odd million. I would imagine a lot of teams would be like, you know what, we're in 5 years, and obviously the average contract, average year would be a little bit higher. But 5 years versus 13 years or 12 years is a big, giant difference when it comes to the risk. And if the Correa side is a little worried about the injury, you want to get those years as well. So, yeah, I'm just wondering where you sit with the whole thing going on with Correa and if he's going to sign and who he's going to sign with. And then Zadie basically saying, I think we're out of talks at this point. I think they want to do something else other than us.
Yeah. And, it's really interesting. The latest thing that Ken Rosenthal said was expected deal, most likely with the Mets, but it expected to look way different than the 12-year, $315 million contract. He was, throwing out there also that, but, there's the feelings on both sides too, because if you're going to lock up a player and you had him at 12 years, 315, and all of a sudden you're like, well, here's 5 years, whatever. Maybe there's some bad feelings with that as well. But, again, behind the scenes negotiation, I'm sure they've been in talks. They're talking. Of course, the disheartening thing that came out of the Zadie interview was that, don't expect us to be in it anymore. He's turned his looks and he's focused on a deal elsewhere. He wants to be somewhere else. But the more you listen to that interview, when Zadie says that, we contacted Boras as soon as he got off of the plane on December 19th at 5 p.m., the press conference wasn't until 11 a.m. the next day. So it's not like, I don't think Boras's account of everybody was dressed and ready to go and about to go to the ballpark, and then the Giants called it off. Zadie said there was no 11th hour call off. We wouldn't do that. We were doing our due diligence and we said, hey, there's a flag here. We want to talk about it.
The one thing I don't get, though, is Zadie did make that comment about how, it might not have been, Carlos and family ready. And there was some question already, even before then. Yeah. But still, the Giants didn't cancel that thing until the morning. So it's not like that night they were like, hey, we're going to have to cancel this press conference. So I sort of understand what he's saying to make it sound, because Boras Society is making it sound like they canceled at the last minute. But they kind of canceled it at the last minute if you only cancel it 3 hours before the thing is supposed to start, unless there was some mixed communication with Giants PR and all that. Like, that's the stuff that we don't know. But they really did cancel it that morning.
They did, but maybe I'm just looking at the side because I'm starting to soften on the whole thing a little bit. We were all emotional. We were angry. It was 5 days before Christmas. We were edgy. Family coming in from out of town. All that stuff. We were getting all amped up. So I'm softening on a little bit. So I'm thinking maybe they had another deal, and they thought, well, Boris might go for this one. Here's our concern with the medical. Boris and company might go for this deal, and we'll still have the press conference tomorrow morning. And it just never materialized. It like Zadie said, we had a difference of opinion on the medical. I'm sure it was, this is what we're concerned with. And Boris said, not a concern. We're not budging from the 13,350. And that was the end of it.
Okay. So other parts of this, Zadie said, and I'll just mention the quote. So he says, but our understanding, as it's been reported, is that they're focused on a deal elsewhere. So I think the chances of a deal with us at this point are pretty unlikely based on their position. And if Rosenthal is correct that the Mets are still top of the line there, then that is probably correct. But you kind of wonder how pushy can Boris be at this point. He's not in the leverage position that he was, where he was. He had the dandy of the entire free agency after Judge got signed, and it was like, okay, who wants him? It's going to be hefty. So he's not in the top position of leverage there. In the back of my head, I wondered if Farhan was just like pulling out of the negotiation, which meant that there was no leverage that you could use the Giants for. And so it was kind of like a little bit of a game with Boris. And then now it's just the Mets and Boris. And at some point, if the thing still is frustrating, then maybe the Giants can sneak back in. That was kind of what was in the back of my head. But I don't know if Farhan really wants to see his name trending on Twitter anymore, just by because it's like, now I know, based on the facts that have come out, based on the information that comes out, we should definitely give the Giants a little bit more benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
However, I'm still frustrated that they had the most money to spend out of everyone, and they failed to get the top two guys, and they failed to get a top pitcher. Now, you could say, oh, Manaea and Stripling, like maybe together they are worth, X pitcher, and maybe that's fine. But I don't look at it that way, because you paid two guys who are looking to improve, and so they can move on next year. And so thus, instead of signing Rodon to a 6-year deal or whatever, you're signing these guys to a 1-year deal. Then you got to try this all over again. And maybe it is Kyle Harrison. You're giving him that 1 year to be ready or whatever. But I still see that as a frustrating scenario for me, which is the common narrative is that the Giants can't bring home the big one. And that only gets worse next year, because the big one is Shohei, and really getting Judge or Correa this year was really to set that table to also grab Ohtani, to show Ohtani like, hey, we're building something here, dude. You want to be a part of this. And now you're telling Ohtani, I'm not quite sure what we are at this point. And that can't be good for them next year.
No, definitely not. But you also have to look at it too and say, well, the Giants could have gotten Judge or Correa, probably not both. They could have gotten one or the other, and they would have had to gone 162 games this season and made the playoffs and go deep in the playoffs. You can't just grab Judge, grab a couple of pitchers, Haniger, and then say, well, we're going to go, get into the playoffs and lose in the first round. Because I think Shohei might look at that and say, well, Mets are a deep team. Mets have a lot of talent. Mets are going to have those guys for a long time.
And they're willing to pay top dollar.
Absolutely. So, I mean, when you look at it now, it's going to be the Dodgers and it's going to be the Mets. Of course, the Padres are going to come in with a blank check like they always do. But I don't – they're going to have to make some trades in the offseason. They're going to have to dump some salary, I think, in order to get Shohei. Unless they're willing to go that far over the luxury tax, like like the Mets are. But that's the other thing too, is let's say Correa, they finally say, okay, 12 years, 315, let's just do it. And they're that far over the threshold. I know they're going to lose Scherzer's salary.
50, yeah.
50, and in a couple of years they're going to lose, and like one more year they're going to lose Verlander's salary. But is that still? Do they still have enough money to get Shohei? I mean, I know Mets fans laugh at that and say, "Of course we do. Look what we've done." But I mean, in reality, I don't know how far over Cohen wants to go, especially if they have a season this year where same thing happens. They get into the playoffs and they lose in the first round. Then you look at it and say, well, we're spending all this money. We can't even get to the World Series. Why are we going to continue to spend this money?
I think you're spending it to give yourself a shot. And as we've seen with how good the Dodgers have been, they've really only won one championship, and that was in the bubble. And that was, and that's been since, 1988. So you're talking about a team who for the last, 10 years has been doing everything correctly, and they still only got one. So I think it's really just the opportunity to get there. And then on the flip side, maybe you're the same thing with the Giants. You're like, oh yeah, we just need the opportunity to get there, and we can do it by not like killing the entire future of what our team could be. I don't know. I see it as inability to close the deal, which has got to be frustrating for them. I get that part, but it's the fans understand more than ever what the opportunities are because we have more information.
Yeah.
We are reading the writers. We know the salaries of these guys. And Zadie came out in the beginning of free agency, right? And he's like, we're going to be in. We're going to be involved in all these top guys. And at the end of the day, the top guy that they got is either Haniger or Conforto, depending on who you think is the better player.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing too, because the Giants could start out the season 24-12 with this team. And then all of a sudden the narrative is going to be, well, we didn't need to spend all this money on Correa and Judge. So I think we need to get through the first month or two of the season, the first, 50 games or so, and just kind of see where this team is at. And then you'll know what their track is at that point. Are they going to start looking towards youth? Are they going to start moving the players? Like if Menea's having a great first half of the season, if Stripling's having a great first half of the season, they're going to start looking at moving those players. Because really, I mean, if let's say Stripling's having a great season, like he had last year, 2 years, $25 million, and he's got an opt out after one, that could scare some teams like it did with Rodon. I think the Giants kind of hurt themselves there with trying to trade him around the All-Star break. And also they were doing well enough. They were still kind of in the hunt. But I think that kind of hurt them because teams said, well, we can get Rodon, but he's only going to be here the rest of the season. Then he's going to opt out, which is fine. Again, I mean, teams rent players all the time. And I think the Giants have a lot of good rental players going into the All-Star break. And that's not what you want to hear as a Giants fan. I mean, we don't want to sit there and say we have a team full of rentals. I mean, again, we sound like the A's at that point where it's just, we got some talented players and we're not going to be in it, but we've got some players for some other teams and then we'll take your prospects. But we've also not been very great at trading for prospects either the last couple of seasons. We end up turning around and trading them, or they just, don't quite pan out.
So the Giants had to say goodbye to Evan Longoria, who signed a 1-year deal with Arizona. They also had to say goodbye to Tommy La Stella, and they got to eat the last year of that deal. That was the first 3-year contract given it to a player in the Zadie era. And maybe the one that hurts the most, at least it hurts me because of how long he was with this organization, is Brian Sabean. Today, it came out that Brian Sabean accepted a deal to be, what is he going to be? An assistant to an advisor. No, he was an advisor with the Giants. And I think he's going to be like an assistant to Cashman or something with the Yankees.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one because he was with the organization since '93, GM since '97. That was his first year as GM, right? '97 when he started wheeling and dealing, just went a little crazy out there. Um, but yeah, that's a tough one because you kind of see Bochy's gone. I mean, he's been gone for a few years, but now he's back in the majors with another team, the Rangers. Sabian's gone. Uh, Brandon Belt is gone. Buster Posey is gone, even though he's with ownership now. Brandon Crawford's in his last season, possibly with the Giants. So it's just kind of the whole regime, everything is kind of dismantled at this point, and now it truly is Farhan Zaidi's team at this point in terms of personnel and management. Uh, you know, it's a tough one, but again, I think the worst part is like Maria Guardado on Twitter had reported that she said Brian Sabean said he expected to do more and be more involved in his advisory role with the Giants, but it didn't turn out that way. So he decided to take off. And that's kind of a tough one too, because the Giants are an organization that's known for taking care of their people, especially their legends. And I would think, I personally think Brian Sabean is a legend. I mean, what he did for the Giants in 10, 12, and 14, and then kickstarting things in 97 with the Jeff Kent trade and just kind of, being a mover and a shaker. So that kind of hurts because you thought maybe he'd be around for a long time, but off to the evil empire.
So you bring up that Kent trade. It is mid-November 1996. Brian Sabean traded a giant fan favorite in Matt Williams. And he had to go on and say the quote, "I am not an idiot," because the Bay Area was so hot after trading Matt Williams. And he even said at that point, he said, "Look, Matt Williams hasn't even been healthy for 2 years. Yeah. And we've been paying him, $13.5 million per season." And so they trade for Jose Vizcaino and Jeff Kent and Tavares, Julian Tavares.
Yeah. And I loved that guy. I loved him as a reliever.
And the Giants also got back $1 million. And so, this is his this is an opportunity for him to kind of, he came from the Yankees. And so they hire him and he's got, this first big opportunity, and the fan base, sports radio, everybody hates it. So his quote here, and this is sort of like Zaidi, like explaining things. And so, this is GM speak, right? Like it's a lot of it is dollars and cents, and the fans don't want to hear it. At that time, he said, "We had two players in Matt Williams and Barry Bonds at the high end of the salary structure. That was a drag on our payroll. With that set up, hard to fill the roster with quality players. We're so far behind LA and San Diego in terms of talent on the roster. How things have not changed. Yeah. And we can't go through a tear down and rebuild program," which is what you just said. They never really did that. They would bounce back the next year and try and compete, which I think the fan base is thankful for, even Absolutely. If they weren't able to compete, because there were some rough years, post Bonds, before Lincecum. And we were trying to get ready for a new stadium, which was coming. And if we don't win, we won't draw. And nowadays, even if they do win, they don't draw because they don't have that star player. So it kind of almost circles back to 1987. And it's like, yeah, they had Bonds. So that helped. That trade obviously was very good trade. Matt Williams would go on and play in the World Series for the Indians, I think the very next year. Then so in 97, the Giants win the division. They win it again in 2000, 2003, 2010, 2012 under Sabian's realm. 4 pennants, winning 3 of those World Series. And yeah, man, just what a nice resume for Brian Sabean. And we give a lot of credit to Boch. We love Boch, right? the players, Lincecum and Madison Bumgarner. And I think Sabean is probably the guy who's maybe a little bit left out in those conversations sometimes. And so it's good to see him still in, doing things. Now he's back in the Big Apple. Bochy's back coaching in Texas. So every little bit of those World Series teams is just leaving. And then if Belt if they don't re-sign him, then that's another one. And we have sort of just one left with Brandon Crawford.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah, it's tough, man. But you know what? We went through it. We go through this all the time because, like, thinking about it, around 91, 92, we lose Boogie Bear, right? We lose Kevin Mitchell.
Yeah.
And, so we're kids and we're like, Kevin Mitchell's gone. What's going on here? And then the one that killed me was when we lost Jeffrey Leonard. Traded him to the Mariners, I think it was, for Ernest the Furnace Riles.
There we go.
Mr. 10,000th home run in Giants history. And then a couple years later, it was Will Clark gone, and then Jeff Kent gone. So we've been through it before. And this is, I don't know. It's so hard to say because we want to say like we're building for the future right now. We're building this team. But I don't know how you build on 1-year deals. So or 2-year deals with 1-year opt-out. So that's the hard part. I think Giants fans are really having a tough time with it right now. And I don't blame all the Giants fans, myself, you. I don't blame all of us for being frustrated at this point because a year or two I can put up with that.
Yeah.
But if we've got to put up with this for 8 or 9 or 10 years, I'm going to revolt at some point. We cannot do that. I want a player signed to a 7-year deal. Lock up Webb for like an 8 or 9 year deal. Get Kyle Harrison up here. Give him 1 good year. I want to see some good numbers, and then lock him up for 8 or 9 years. We want people to root for. I want new jerseys. Look at these jerseys.
Exactly.
That's Jeffrey Leonard. That's Willie Mays. I need a newer jersey, but I don't know who to buy. I could buy a Brandon Crawford, but is he going to be here next year? Probably not. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you 100%. And we'll get to that a little bit more in our last segment, which will be about resolutions for us for this podcast and for our Giants. But before that, I want to talk about the offseason. And I don't know that they're done. Right. We don't know that they're done. They could make a trade. There could be some smaller things out there as far as bringing guys in, especially because there does seem to be a little bit of a hole in center field. Now, Yastrzemski can definitely play there. Defensively, I think we'd be okay with him. But if he hits like 215 again, and they're running him out there for 450 to 500 at bats, I don't know that that's going to be too fantastic. So we'll see what it is. But if the offseason ended today, here are the players. They added Jock Peterson on the qualifying deal. Mm-hmm. They added Mitch Haniger. They added Michael Conforto to a 1-1. They added Taylor Rogers. They added Sean Manaea and Ross Stripling both to 1-1. So Conforto, Manaea, and Stripling more than likely will not be on this team next year. And if they are not next year, in 2024. And if they are on this team next year, that means they sucked in 2023. So that's who we added for next season. Who did we lose? We lost Rodon, who had a fantastic season, one of the best pitching seasons in recent memory, for starting pitching seasons for the San Francisco Giants. We lost Evan Longoria, and we didn't really lose Sabean, but he sort of counts.
Yeah.
And
apparently we found out he wasn't doing much.
Yeah.
So the last
October 31st, he's been gone. And then, LaStella, who also didn't do anything. LaStella was probably a minus WAR player for us in his full history with the Giants.
Not probably. He
So that's the scorecard there. The way that I look at this is the flip side is adding Judge and Correa to that unit makes it an A+ offseason. Subtracting Judge or Correa from that unit makes it a little bit different. And I don't want to say this was a failed offseason because I do think that they improved from last year's roster. But is it a improvement in the C plus range? Is it an improvement in the B minus range? Where do you sit with this?
I think it's an improvement. I got to go with a C plus at this point. I'd love to see more. I don't know what else can be done at this point because
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we'll touch on a possible
That is
Brian
next.
Reynolds trade, but
That is next.
it's not going to happen. We're going to get to that, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
Um, we Taylor Rogers, I think, was huge. That was big for the Giants bullpen. They could still use more arms in the bullpen. They're going to get a couple of waiver wire guys, and plus they have so many young arms in the minors that they can still. Does Junior Marte, does he get better next season? I don't know. But just looking at the additions and subtractions of the Giants that happened to them this offseason, I can only go a C plus. I can't go more than a C plus.
I'm with you. I think it's a C plus, and I want to say it could even be worse because you're signing Conforto essentially for 1 year. And so Haniger on a 3-year deal or Conforto on a 3-year deal, who would you rather have?
On a 3-year deal and without the opt-out?
Yes.
Honestly, Haniger. I think that's the better of the two players. I like Haniger a lot better. They're both banged up. They're both injured players or coming off of injuries. I don't know. They're not injured right now, but they're both coming off of injuries, and Conforto's was more serious, but I think I'd rather definitely have Haniger on the 3-year.
That's interesting because I am my worry about Haniger is he is the right-handed jock, probably going to be better defensively, but just the swoony kind of offense, right? So super hot, and then goes through this cold spell. If Conforto, obviously we don't know if he's going to be healthy or not. I just see his bat as a little bit more electric for that park, and who knows? Maybe he doesn't have that great. Maybe he has an okay season, and the Giants are like, okay, we're going to take this money that we're paying you, and we're going to move it on somewhere else. So I think that's kind of the question mark for me is if you could, would they have signed Conforto to a longer deal just so that he is around for a while? We don't have to do this dance again, but there's risk in doing that too because he is hurt. Or he has,
and that's the thing is I would have been totally fine with them also giving Conforto a 3-year deal. I'll take both of them at a 3-year deal. Yes, there's risk in both players, but for the money that they're giving, it's not that much. You can still continue to build your team, especially if you have good pitching that comes in and you can squeak out a couple more runs per game, another run and a half per game, and another 2 runs per game. And the Giants could be a playoff team. I don't think it's that far off. But yeah, it almost feels, and it had to be from the Conforto camp too. It had to be like, hey, he just needs a place where after a year, if he's had a good year, he wants to get back out on the market again. And so the Giants probably said, "Oh, okay, well, we're that place." I don't know if you've heard, but we're that place. So I'm sure that's how the negotiation went down. Exactly.
All right. So next thing here, and the last thing really, well, actually, no, 2 more things, because you mentioned the Brian Reynolds thing. So we had already talked about this because we had asked our friend Roger what it would take to trade him or trade for Brian Reynolds, sorry. And he sent us a laundry list of players. Now, this trade that one of the, I think Jim Bowden, I think he asked for fans to put together trade deals for the mailbag that he did. And the fan said the Pirates get Kyle Harrison, Luis Matos, Will Bednar, and Sam Long. Now, I think in the Roger deal, that Roger Munter deal, he had who else did he have in there in this deal?
Oh, let me go back and look at it. Hang on 1 second.
He had
Kyle Harrison, Luis Matos, Will Bednar, and Slingin' Sammy Long. And we would get Reynolds and Yover Peguero.
Right. That's what this writer or this fan asked Bowden. In Rogers' deal, he also had Luciano in there, and I think maybe Bednar wasn't in there or something. So, but he had the both prospects. Now, for the Giants to trade for Kyle Harrison or trade Kyle Harrison, I think they probably need one of the top 15 players in baseball, which Brian Reynolds is not. Now, the thing that's attractive about Brian Reynolds, you still have the 3 years of his contract that you don't have to worry about. You have him on the books for 3 years. So that is attractive. And that's why Pittsburgh will probably ask for so much and just sort of be like, yeah, last year was an off year. The year before is really who he is. But that trade, so they asked that trade, and good old Bowden said, I like your trade proposal from the Pirates perspective, but certainly would not from the Giants side. In fact, I wouldn't even do Harrison straight up for Reynolds. That was super interesting. Yeah. I liked what he said there. The other guy who was kind of judging the trade said, it would be great to have the Bednar family reunion, but the proposal seems clunky and unworkable, and you wouldn't trade your highly touted shortstop unless you really thought O'Neal Cruz was going to be a shortstop. So it sounds like he may not be. So that was their grade on that trade. And, but just the fact that Bowden said Harrison, not even straight up for Reynolds, that makes me believe Harrison's value around baseball is even higher than we believe. Like, that is big time.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. First off, I would never do that deal. Totally agree with Jim Bowden on that. And I've been listening to him for years and years and years on MLB Network Radio, and we kind of had this on the same wavelength when it comes to that type of stuff. But that's pretty crazy. I'm just looking at the names on there. Can you imagine losing in one deal for a player we've had in the past? Kyle Harrison, Matos.
Yeah, 3 of your top 7 or 8 prospects or whatever.
Yeah, that's insane, man. I mean, there's a lot of hypotheticals right now. I'll take Yaz in center field if that's what it takes to get Brian Reynolds.
What if Reynolds grows back the mustache, though? But then Yaz had a mustache at some point.
Yeah, Yaz had a better mustache. Yeah, get out of here, Brian Reynolds. We don't need your mustache. We already have one fantastic one. I love the hypotheticals this time of year because now the big free agents are gone, and now you start throwing out what about this guy for these 8 prospects, and you're sitting there going, no, especially when we don't get Judge or Correa. You don't want to get desperate. You certainly, absolutely, at this point of the season, do not want to get desperate and start just throwing your prospects into deals to fill a hole. Is Brian Reynolds going to make it so that this is a playoff team all of a sudden? You lose all those players and then you're a playoff team? I don't see it.
Yeah. But, if you look at the roster, the Giants don't have, because Grant Brisbee just did this thing where he looked at who the Giants have plugged in at certain positions and where they would rank. I forget who did the rankings. I don't know if it's Fangraphs or whatever, but I don't think that they had any players in the top 10 at an everyday position in the league. So it was all mid. No. So it was all 15 to 20 and in some cases even worse. So you can't, like you said, you can't just plug Brian Reynolds in and then you're like, yep, now we're in the playoffs. Like it's gonna be more tinkering and more things. And Kyle Harrison is a dude, and I hope that we haven't had great luck with a lot of this of late when it comes to these prospects. We're waiting for some of these guys to come up, and he may be the first one. But Joey Bart, Joey Bart's been a C, a C minus. You still have hope for him, and you still like him because team draft him with the number 2 pick. But he obviously does not look like the second coming of Mike Piazza in any way.
No, he's looking more like it's him and Patrick Bailey. I mean, Patrick Bailey's got great defense, and so it's like
just plug him in.
Yeah. I mean, if you can get like 2 good months out of Joey Bart, at that point, do you trade him and go, well, we got Patrick Bailey, and Joey Bart could crash and burn after these 2 months, so sell him while he's hot.
Or maybe you just have these draft picks to I think Bailey's technically a switch hitter, but just have him play the late innings behind the dish and hit against certain righties, and when you don't want Bart to take those big time strikeouts. I don't know. That's probably not even a plus WAR player offensively. You put those 2 guys together, but
no. And I think Giants fans are kind of getting a little tired of platoons. I think we've seen enough platoons lately. That's why we were so excited about Judge and Correa, because you're like, those are 162 game players right there.
Yeah,
plug them in. Don't even look back. 100.
You don't got to worry about it.
Yeah. Instead, we have Conforto, Haniger, and now look around the infield: J.D. Davis, Brandon Crawford, Tyro Estrada, Lamont Wade Jr. at first. So you're looking. Those are platoon players. We have a lot of platoon players, which is good. It's good for the matchups if it's working.
Yep.
If you make that move late in the game and you get a strikeout in a key situation, fans are going to start saying, we could have had Correa in that spot and he would be in there and he'd play all 9 innings and everything would have gone well. But, hypotheticals.
Yeah, the platoon stuff. And Kapler said it's not going away. They're even more excited about the platoon stuff. It's like, all right.
Salivating.
Okay, so last segment of the show before we get out of here.
Yeah.
Andy McCullough, writer for The Athletic, did a resolutions piece for every single team in the league. And for the Giants, he said the one resolution for the Giants is to extend Logan Webb, which you mentioned earlier in this show. And so I like the idea of giving the Giants a resolution, but I also wanted each of us to say what our resolutions are. I actually have 2. And then also do one for the podcast. So let's do one for the Giants, and then let's do one for ourselves, and then we can do one for the podcast. Okay. Why don't you go ahead and go first for the Giants?
Okay, for the Giants, I want to see a resolution from them to play with more life and more passion. Last year was dreary. It was sad. It was an 81-81 team. It was flat. That's a tie. I mean, everybody knows how much we love ties in sports when you're just even and you're not better and you're not worse. I think they were just shell-shocked after the 107-win season, and then starting out cold, lots of injuries, players just not playing up to their potential. But there was just so much emotion. There's good and coming up. So we're looking at bookending this offseason. The playoffs that we just saw, the expanded playoffs, and then the World Series, the emotion in those games in Philly, in those games in Houston and San Diego. It was so fun to watch, so exciting. In Cleveland had crazy crowds. All that emotion, the players' emotion on the fields, the pounding of the chest, stealing a base, standing up, getting the crowd going. Giants need that because you saw that at the end of the season. Now we have the offseason. Now here comes the World Baseball Classic, right? Here we go. Team USA.
Yeah.
Right? Team USA. There's going to be emotion. The Venezuelan players, the Puerto Rican players. I mean, it's going to be insane. So then the Giants can't come out there and just go, ho hum, base hit. All right, yay, we scored a run. There needs to be life. There needs to be life from the crowd. There needs to be life on the field. So that is my long-winded New Year's resolution for the Giants. Life and passion in baseball. I want it back in San Francisco.
I think ours kind of connect with each other. So now this is not going to happen this year. So this is sort of a resolution to roster building in the future. They need to put together a roster that's attractive long term to the big time players. The one and done stuff is fine, or the 1-and-1 stuff is fine. If you're on the cusp of being in the playoffs every year, and you need to add like a player here and there, but we can't be the farm system for players to rehab their careers.
No.
Shohei Ohtani does not want to go to a team that wants to rehab players so they can go elsewhere and get money.
Right.
And as we've seen with Judge, even if you offer the most money, you just become the leverage that the main team, that the player uses against the team that they want to go to, which we saw. Build a roster with flexibility as well as long-term sustainability. I'm not saying you can't do the stuff that we're talking about with, the righty lefty stuff and, the one and one. Like you can have those kind of players if they're necessary to plug in, but you need the long-term sustainability of the players, because how else are Giants fans, young Giants fans, going to be created? The Warriors are out here. You have Steph Curry and Clay and Draymond. The 49ers have been, they haven't been good every year, but they're definitely building a squad and a roster of players, which in football is kind of hard to build a roster and to kind of keep them around for a little while just because of the way the cap works. But imagine a Trey Lance or a Brock Purdy, the quarterback for the next 5 years. Like 5 years, the Giants are going to have a completely brand new roster in 5 years if they keep going the same way, right? So that is my resolution for them is we can do some of this goofy stuff, but let's also pull back on it and let's really look into long-term sustainability with some of these teams that
I like the 1-year deals. I like the 1-year opt-outs, but man, not when it's 2/3 of your outfield, or 3/9 of your, what is that? 1/3? Yeah, I'm bad at math. 1/3 of your lineup is, 3 players in there are 1-year deals, and 2/5 of your starting rotation is on a 1-year deal. It's hard to swallow as a fan. So yeah, I'm with you. That all needs to change.
All right. What about for you? What is the resolution for yourself here?
So when you said pick a resolution, I don't do resolutions. I'm not a resolution
I don't really do them either.
person. Yeah, I don't, because I can't do the I'm going to eat less carbs this week. No, I think that's why I can maintain my health so much, is because I always just, like, if I'm eating too many carbs in July, I go, okay, I need to stop that. And I
just pull back.
So you and I are on the same wavelength when it comes to health. And if we need to cut back on something, we cut back on something. But there is something I would like to do more this year. In the pandemic year, I did it a lot more. And as things have opened up, I've done it a lot less now. But I would like to consume more print media. I'm not good at. I was great. I read probably 8 books the year of the pandemic, 2020.
There you go.
Last year, I think I read 2, and then and one I started in July, and I'm still working on it. So that one I'd like to finish. And I have some favorite authors of new books coming out. I have a list of books, some great rock documentaries. I have the Slash book. I have the one from the drummer from the Black Crowes. So I have so many books I'd love to get to. And so that's my resolution. More print media, more magazine. I love magazines, but I'll even take them in digital form. So
Apple News. You get all these magazines in Apple News.
Exactly. Guitar Player magazine. I love Men's Health, Wired, Sound and Vision, all of those. So that's my resolution. Get back more into print media.
Yeah, I'm with you on kind of the way to do it. So, okay, I have two. The first one will relate a little bit to this podcast because as I haven't mentioned, we haven't mentioned what we are
Oh,
drinking here yet. But I
there you
sent
go.
you a note the other day, and I was like, you know what? I just want to get more into scotch. Like
Yeah.
I've enjoyed the bourbon. This podcast has been a really big thing for me to get into bourbon and to just think about trying new stuff because I know every Monday or Tuesday we're going to have a segment in which, we share what we're drinking. Scotch has been a little bit I think when I was younger and I was sort of trying to get into bourbon, I think I just mixed it up with, oh yeah, bourbon and scotch, they're like the same thing. And scotch's taste is a little different. It's not I feel like bourbon is easier to adapt to if you're not a whiskey drinker. Like, I don't know if it's the difference in the mash or whatever, but it for taste buds, for me, it was a little easier to kind of get into it. And scotch was always a little bit harder. I was like, "Oh gosh, I want to try this." And then I was like, it's not that great." But now over the years, I think my taste buds have definitely changed, and I want to get into scotch more so. Um, so I bought a couple of just cheap ones at the grocery store because they didn't have a good selection. A lot of it was gone. So I'm gonna have to get to a Total Wine or order some because I want to get some of the stuff that you have. But I also what I also wanted to do is just learn more. And so I started following some YouTube accounts of like just scotch and whiskey and
That's the
different,
best way to do it.
different alcohols and liquors to just to learn because there's so many of these great websites and these guys got like million subscribers on their channels. I'm like, man, that's cool. So that's one of them. And the second one, and so you and I like the app that comes with our phones called Apple Fitness Plus.
Yes.
And so
Love it.
I've been resisting a little bit because I'm so sad that I can't really lift heavy weights anymore. I have an issue with my right arm. I'm not sure what the injury is, but if I lift a little heavy, uh, there's a pain near the bicep tricep area.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then if it gets bad, like my fingers start to tingle, like it kind of gets a
Ooh.
little numb and like dead. So I'm like, okay, that's tells me that I can't really lift heavy weights right now. I talked to a doctor, like, oh, maybe it's the neck. I'm like, I hope it's not the neck.
Yeah, it could be a pinched nerve that goes down. It's possible.
And I do have those issues where I kind of
Yeah.
get that little pinch nerve,
Try a
once a
little
month.
acupuncture.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there could be a couple different things going on. But what I thought, and I don't know why I never thought about this before, but they have the strength workouts on Apple Fitness
Mhm.
Plus. And if I just go light, I still get a little bit of that weightlifting rush that is
Yeah.
so addictive. And so I think that's what I'm gonna do. And I like the hit stuff. I don't because of my knees, it's a little bit harder on the knees when I do the hit stuff. But the strength workouts with lighter weights may be the way for me to get back into this thing. So that is my other goal, which is to go back to doing strength workouts, just doing them a little smarter than I
Yeah.
did 5 years ago when I was a little bit younger. So those are my two. So Scotch
That's
and Apple Fitness Plus.
that's what I discovered last year, and I started to get into the Apple Fitness Plus weightlifting, the weights,
Yeah.
because a lot of it, there's push-ups, there's all kinds of stuff you can do. And with Apple Fitness Plus and in the weights, there's three categories. You can do upper body, you can do lower body, or you can do total body, and they mix in upper and lower in those. And so if my legs are really bad one week, I'll do Monday, Wednesday, Friday of upper body.
Mm-hmm.
Then if I'm good the next week, I'll pick a totally different exercise, but I'll do the same one 3 times in 1 week, because then you can see the progress. By the time you do the third one, you feel good about it. And I'm 50 years old almost. And so I'm doing like my heavies are 15s, 15 dumbbells. And then, my mids are 12 and my lights are 10. But, it keeps my shoulders strong. I went out and shoveled for 2 hours the other day. Felt fine after, a little sore in the forearm, but other than that, totally fine. You're going to love it. Once you get into it, you're going to see, oh man, I should have been doing this for years.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Now for this podcast, this one is a little bit harder because we've been doing a good job. We don't take weeks off. If Brad is on vacation or I'm on vacation, we kind of record something on the weekend, or we double it up so that we have a consistent amount of shows. And this is episode 133, so that's not bad at all for
That's great.
just to keep on the consistency. And I have a thing where I don't like to go dark. I don't like having an off week. So that's not even the resolution. We're just going to keep going weekly as best as we can, unless something happens, because something could always happen. The resolution, I think what I would like to do is get at least one baseball writer from a national outlet. And some of that is going to be like how much it means to them, right? Because we're a small channel still. We're a small podcast. These guys don't have a ton of time to do this kind of, marketing stuff and to come and answer questions. But there's got to be opportunities out there. We have connections with Darren Chan from KMBR, who I'm actually going to see in March. He and I are going to hang out in March. So there may be some opportunities there. And,
Nice.
I know, I have a good buddy who works for the Ringer, and, maybe I can kind of get some stuff going on there. There's stuff. So that's going to be my one goal, is for you and I to get a national writer to come and talk some smart stuff about the Giants. Now, that is not to say that we haven't had good guests, because we've actually picked it up lately. We were the bad luck charm for San Jose State and Justin Algiers, and then when they lost their bowl game, and then
but basketball, they've been doing good.
Yes,
So you can't.
I wanted to go to a game this weekend, but if I don't go to the Warriors game tomorrow night, I think I'm going to try to go to the Warriors game Saturday night, and that was going to be my night to go see San Jose State.
Oh, okay.
So that might not happen, but they're playing really well. We had Charles who told the story last week, so we've had some pretty cool opportunities to talk to folks. And of course, earlier this year, we talked to Jeff Young, who helped us break down the craziness of the beginning of free agency. And I'm sure Darren will want to come on with us at some point before the Giants season starts. I'll be in touch with him, and we'll get him back on. So that is my promise, is that I'm going to work hard and try and see if we can get a more national writer to come on with us and talk Giants. I think that'll be fun.
I think I like that. I think that's great. And I know it's fun to have, some of the guests like that on who are national, because we cover the Giants. I mean, we talk about the Giants. That's our thing. But this year, with so many rule changes coming, so many different things that are going to happen in the game of baseball, it'd be nice to have somebody on that we can also talk to the game, the state of the game, and how things have changed, and what they see for the future of the game. I think when I look at, again, I don't do resolutions, but I think this year, and I think Farhan forced my hand, I'm not going to be as positive. I'm not going to be spinning things for us as much as I have the last couple of years, because it is time to get critical. This is the year, man. This is the year that we were told we have lots of money to spend, and we're going to go out and nobody's out of our price range. Well, people might not be out of your price range, but a couple big guys didn't want to come here for one reason or another. It just kind of played out that way. So I think my positive spin on things, not like I'm just going to be an old curmudgeon. I'm not going to all of a sudden turn 50 in July and just grab my cane and start whacking people with
it. Are we going to get a birthday party for July?
I don't, you know what? Here was my original idea. Is I thought, well, maybe I'll travel down to San Francisco, see the Giants game on my birthday, but they're not in town on my birthday.
Got it.
So we ended up getting a 3-bedroom exchange for our timeshare down in Vegas.
Oh, that'll be fun.
In Vegas in July, is that? I mean,
well, it's gonna be hot as hell. But
what idiot does that? This guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're taking the family down there. We got a Marriott, which is really cool, and it's right on the strip. And so for my birthday this year, we're gonna go see the Beatles Cirque show.
There you
go. I've been, every time we go there, I'm like, I want to go see it. It's about $120 a ticket, but I thought this year for my 50th, That's what I'm doing.
It's
So,
worth it.
and
It's
Garth
worth it.
Brooks is going to be there too. So I might go see some Garth Brooks.
Wow. That'll be a birthday to remember for sure.
Yeah,
Much
absolutely.
deserved for you. Your 50th year. This is going to be a
50,
good
man.
year. I feel it.
I hope so.
It's going to be good for this show. Cross our fingers about the Giants. All of a sudden, Michael Conforto's going to hit 350 with 30 bombs. And he's going to leave
I'll take
us.
it. I'll take it. I was going to say I'll take it, but then he won't be here next year. So.
And yeah, so no, it's going to be good stuff. So we're done with the first show of the year. We'll be back next week. Hopefully back on our Monday schedule without the holidays. But no, this has been good. We this leaves me with hope. This leaves me fired up for us to have a good 2023. So for Brad, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.
Peace.